Saturday, November 17th, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 2018. Guys, before we get started in this video, make sure you check the subscribe button here at the YouTube channel. It's a two-step process. You click the red rectangle that says subscribe, and then you click the bell, the notifications bell on the side, and make sure that's activated so you'll be notified whenever we upload new videos. If you're a new viewer, make sure you subscribe. If you're a current subscriber, double check and make sure you're still subscribed to the channel, as I've had several people say that they were unsubscribed for whatever reasons, and I've had that happen to me as well. So just double check to make sure you're still subscribed. Okay, here we go. Guys, remember back last year, and we haven't concluded this study. We've been following it for many months. It's just kind of slowed down, at least for the time being. We haven't seen many pictures of this phenomenon. And what I'm talking about are global water anomalies. You can see here I've placed little X's on the map all around the world of different observations made by people that have seen what they consider out of the ordinary water disappearances from typically coastlines. And you can see a lot of activity along the east coast of the U.S. up to Newfoundland, down into the Caribbean, where I got a report from that Belize area, a boat captain that's been out on these waters his entire life. I'm talking about in the Caribbean. And he's seen strange water currents in the seas out there that he can't explain and has never seen before. Extend from South Africa to India to Denmark, over to San Diego, Ecuador, several instances through here. Like I said, the Bahamas and the East Coast, but probably other areas too that we just haven't heard of. We did get a lot of pictures from different people all around the world of water disappearing, and the reason that they took these pictures is because it was unusual. It was something that they're just not used to seeing. The remains of a ancient Roman aqueduct was uncovered in Spain after a tropical storm, and the storm, which really wasn't that strong, was blamed for pulling the water away from the coast and exposing this 2,000-year-old ancient Roman aqueduct system, which, okay, I suppose that's possible, but again, it wasn't a very strong storm, and it was another example of water disappearing from the coastline, like you see here over in Thailand. People were out walking around looking for things that they had never seen before. That's why they were out here walking around taking pictures in this area right here, because the water disappeared in a fashion like they'd never seen before. Yeah, they've seen low tide and high tide. That's part of their day-to-day life. But when the water disappeared like that, they were completely thrown off. It was just way too much. So we got to following this phenomenon, and this is a photo from the Connecticut area. Gentleman noticed that the low tide was just way too low. Now, he's pointing to where it normally is. Here's another picture from, I want to say this is down around, I'm not exactly sure, but this is from Florida, taken by Brian. Here's another picture from Florida by Brian in Navarre, and the reason he took the picture is because he'd never seen it like this before, and he's lived here for over 25 years. Walked out into the what's normally water almost 100 yards, completely disappeared, and he was very mystified by that. Another gentleman took a picture. I think this was in the New York area, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the Carolinas, somewhere out east. As I showed you on that map earlier, there were several observances in the eastern, or along the eastern seaboard, like this one here. I think this is from the Carolinas, one of the Carolinas, south or north boats. That's a sailboat tipped over on its side, which was sitting in water that quickly disappeared. This was something we were following for a while. The Mississippi River was showing a side of itself that we had never seen before, and the locals that live here were taking pictures of this because they'd never seen this happen before. They'd seen low rivers, of course, but nothing like this. This was just a little too much. This isn't the Mississippi. This is somewhere in the Carolinas, I want to say. I'm just showing you guys some examples to kind of refresh your mind. Those of you that do remember this is the Mississippi River again. In fact, there was concerns about barges even getting through here in this area. They couldn't, and this is a main thoroughfare for the international grain market, the Mississippi River. So that definitely needs water. This was in the Ecuador area, Water retreated way farther than they're normally used to seeing. Another classic example here, people out there walking around in areas that normally would require boats or some sort of marine vehicle. Another example here. Got many examples. We did many videos on this phenomenon. Still follow the phenomenon. It just seems to have slowed down a little bit. We're not getting hardly any pictures like we were there for a while. We were getting daily reports, it seemed like, of this unusual phenomenon. Well, there's a story that came out a couple of days ago, and this is something that I've been thinking about too for a while, but you know, it's a complex subject. There's water all over the globe. There could be a variety of reasons that this phenomenon is occurring, and I'm leaning towards this one here that just came out in an article. Well, in fact, it came out in several articles since the 15th or the 14th. And it originated from Washington University in St. Louis. And there's articles now talking about this particular story. The Earth is eating its own oceans. That's dated the 14th. This is from popularmechanics.com, dated the 15th. Earth's crust is swallowing way more ocean than we thought originally. It originated from the source, Washington University. Dated the 14th of November, seismic study reveals huge amount of water dragged into Earth's interior. And I got to reading this and I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. If water is leaking down into the Earth, then that would explain possibly some of these coastal water anomalies that we're seeing. For whatever reasons in these areas, if water is leaking down into the Earth at an excessive rate, then water would disappear from coastlines. And it always slowly comes back. But what's causing this? For instance, the Mariana Trench. That's one area that they've studied, and they do have an understanding that water does enter the Earth's crust near the Mariana Trench in certain areas. And it makes you wonder, you know, just how big is this, basically an ocean under the ocean? If you look at the Earth is not waterproof, you know, on its surface. You know, we have oceans that occupy 70% of the planet. Is that just excess water that doesn't fit inside the planet? And there's an entire ocean system underneath the surface, and the water that we see is water that's excessive. Or is water coming out from inside the ocean, underneath the ocean? And that's why we're seeing different coastal phenomenons. It's coming out and then retreating back in for whatever reasons, taking more water with it. And we'll see these areas that have water retreats, and that's what we used to call them too. Water would retreat, disappear, and people would be out taking pictures of these areas that they'd never seen dry before. Down here in Belize, this boat captain was seeing unusual currents out in the Caribbean Sea that he's not used to seeing. Well, if the Earth's crust is leaking water, if water, say, was going through the crust in this area here, that would create some sort of a, you know, unusual current at the surface level that this man would see. And we did see water anomalies along the coast of Belize. Water disappeared a few times from the coast, and people were mystified out taking pictures of it. Saw it all the way down through the Caribbean at different times, not all the time. Ecuador saw it multiple times. Down in South America, just a big wide area through here. There were many observations of this phenomenon, and these are just the ones that we know of, the pictures that I showed you guys. There could have been a lot more. A gentleman by the name of Philip up in Newfoundland's been observing what looks like a permanent new high tide. I haven't seen pictures from this area for a while. I have to get an update from him, but the water up here rose and it stayed at a much higher level than he's ever seen. And again, he's a lifelong resident, and along the coast there's a area, well, a large area of more water along the coast than he's ever seen. And we're seeing areas where there's less water at times. So it's like the water is being pulled into the planet and then it's slowly releasing back out to its normal position along these coasts. Because if you look at the Earth, And think about it, there's no way that it can be waterproof, so to speak, like the surface of the earth. It has to have leaks somewhere. And in order for the water to stay on the surface of the earth in the form of oceans, then there's got to be water inside the planet that make up like some sort of a giant ballast. You guys understand what a ballast is, or a ballast tank? Earth probably has what is known as like a natural ballast tank, and that would be that ocean under the ocean. A ballast tank is a compartment within a boat. That's what we call them in modern vehicles, ships, submarines, other floating devices that hold water. A ballast tank is a compartment within a boat or floating structure that holds water, which is used as a ballast to provide stability for a vessel. Using water in a tank allows for easier adjustment of weight than stone or iron ballast in the old vessels. It also allows for ballast to be pumped out to temporarily reduce the draft of the vessel when required to enter shallow waters. Airships used ballast tanks for similar advantages. Submarines. Ballast tanks are used to control the buoyancy of submarines. That's how submarines work. There's a ballast tank, a layer basically of water that provides, you fill it up with water and the submarine sinks. You know, when the water is released from the ballast tank, the submarine rises. So and it's very like with regard to the earth. Let's say there's an ocean under the ocean all the way around the world. It would explain, some of these water phenomenons, in my humble opinion. Ballasts also, with regard to ships, provide a very low center of gravity for ships, especially big ships. So look at the earth as having a ballast tank, and that would be the ocean under the ocean. And that ocean would create, a gravitational pull on the surface water and keep it circulating around the planet and things like that. Europa, this moon here, has a subsurface ocean. So does Ganymede, a subsurface ocean. So I think Earth has a subsurface ocean as well. I think that's what's caused these water anomalies that we've been seeing, or we saw several last year, especially during the last half of 2017. And I think for whatever reasons, water is leaking, especially at tectonic zones where tectonic plates meet. Water is being pulled down into the earth at these tectonic regions, and it's being released in other areas, or slowly coming back to the area that saw the extreme water anomaly. Mariana Trench, it's a very deep, 11,000 meters they went down to, I think, or got very close to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. That's an area where water enters the earth, from what I understand. So an ocean under the ocean is certainly not far-fetched, and the surface water that we see could be extra water that simply won't fit, and then sometimes, for whatever reasons, at tectonic boundaries, the water is pulled in. Here's an interesting theory that, could possibly explain the Great Flood. It's just a theory, guys, but let's say, for instance, that the original flood came up from the center of the earth, then receded back into the planet. The ocean that is underneath the ocean is what caused the original flood, possibly. It drained back in, and all was good for a while. There is not enough water on the surface of the planet to completely submerge all of the planet at once. The extra water came from below the crust, the ocean under the ocean. Just a theory, one that could quite possibly be true, don't know, but I think the ocean under the ocean is moving and doing things that we're not quite familiar with yet, and we're seeing signs of it in the form of water disappearing from coastlines, from different areas all around the world. We're still following this phenomenon, as it's very, very intriguing. But there is a new discovery that has came out recently within the last couple of days about the slow motion collision of tectonic plates under the ocean that's dragging about 3 times more water down into the deep earth than previously estimated. And according to a first of its kind seismic study, that goes back to, they're talking about the Mariana Trench as being one of those areas. There's 3 times as much water being taken down into the earth than they normally thought. That's a big deal. So interesting story here, guys, about this seismic study. I'll post the link below in the description box. Thanks for watching. Have a super day and be safe out there.